Welcome to this latest edition of CenterView, our monthly Zoomcast sponsored by Baltimore's Center Club, featuring the doers and the deciders of Baltimore and our region. We're delighted that you've made time to join us. Our aim is to feature the people and issues impacting our present and shaping our future, as well as the movers and the doers from across our region who are creating momentum and making a positive difference. I'm your host, Greg Tucker, a Baltimore City resident since 1997. A Baltimore lover, I might add, and an independent strategic communications advisor working and living here in the city. Today, we're especially honored to have as our guest the 52nd Mayor of Baltimore, Mayor Brandon Scott. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. We're going to come to you in just a moment. We're delighted that you made time for this discussion of the first 100 days of your administration. By way of introduction, not that he needs one, Mayor Scott was first elected to Baltimore City's council, representing the 2nd District in 2011. At the ripe age of 27, you may have been the youngest, or certainly among the youngest, ever elected to that body. Brandon Scott was unanimously elected president of the City Council in May of 2019, and then, of course, elected mayor last November, having won the Democratic primary the previous June. Mayor Scott is a devoted community leader, a ardent public servant, a lifelong resident of Baltimore City, a proud Baltimorean, a graduate of Mervo High School and St. Mary's College of Maryland, and a resident of Frankford neighborhood in Northeast Baltimore. Mayor, first, let me congratulate you, as many have, on your State of the City address that was so well received and made clear your administration's priorities and what's needed to address the challenges that threaten the prospects of us all, and especially those who have been left behind for far too long. In your first 100 days, Mayor, and as you highlighted in your State of the City address, you identified the key metrics. I'll just quickly do them and then turn it over to you. Building public safety, making Baltimore equitable, prioritizing our youth, building public trust, the COVID recovery, and responsible stewardship of city resources. And of course, underlying all these are some 58 actions in various stages of implementation. Let me just ask you, from a top-line assessment, how do you think the administration's doing? It's a big load, it's a heavy lift, but you're up to it.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, and thank you everyone for having me. I think that we handled our first 100 days very well. We hit the ground running, but I'm not satisfied. I always want better. I'm a tough grader on myself and on my team. When everyone thinks we did something perfect, I'm going to find the things that we could have done better to improve on that action. We've had a very busy first 100 days. I would just ask folks, if they want to go and look at the items, they can just go to mayor.baltimorecity.gov/tracker. You can see that. And it's really about bringing real substantive change to Baltimore, Greg. And we know that's going to be a difficult journey, but in those first 100 days, I'm proud to say that we're moving in the right direction. Like I said last week, the state of our city is strong. The foundations of the things that we have done, right? Bringing our first professional city administrator to Baltimore, dedicated servant in Chris Shorter, hiring our first chief equity officer in Dana Moore, bringing in our new DPW director, Jason Mitchell, who is coming from Oakland, who has done great work to get that agency that is leaps and bounds ahead of where we are here in Baltimore and where we need to be. But we know that this is just the beginning, laying out the first of its kind public safety plan with Director Jackson from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement to see how we can work in partnership with our community to build safety in Baltimore. And we're going to do that always with the utmost integrity in my administration, and we're going to work hard every day.
Excellent. We'll come to a couple of those key priorities and talk about those further, and of course during the Q&A session. But Baltimore is the beneficiary now of what's arguably the most transformative legislative development in decades, with President Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And so Baltimore is set to receive, as you well know, something like $670 million, which is entirely separate from what Baltimore will receive in other areas, such as expanded child tax and earned income tax credits, unemployment insurance, direct support for restaurants and small businesses. So let me ask you, what's the plan to seize what seems like a once in a generation potential, this $670 million windfall? How do you bring together the neighborhoods, the downtown community, all these stakeholders to create a real convening that everybody can feel like they're participating in defining the city's future.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And let me first start off by thanking President Biden, Vice President Harris, our wonderful congressional delegation who worked hard. I actually had the opportunity of being on a call directly with the Vice President, where myself and other mayors from cities similar to Baltimore talked about how important it was for us in cities to get direct funding and to have them hear us loud and clear, and not just hear us with their ears, but show us with their actions means the world to us. The most important part, Greg, we're going to still awaiting the guidance to make sure that we can see what we can do with these funds, to see, as you know, how those things work. My goal, as I said before, is to prioritize these funds to get Baltimoreans working again, helping our businesses recover, and invest in our people in places that have been left out due to the inequitable policies of the past. We are going to make sure that this money gets out into the community in Baltimore and helps fill gaps where we need it, help folks recover from COVID, invest in our people in a different way, invest in a future, and help us build a better Baltimore from the ground up. There's going to be a very robust process for that. My team and I are actually meeting this week to further discuss that. And as we hear more from the Treasury Department about any rules and regs around this a historic investment into our city, we will be sure to get that information out to the public as soon as we can.
Excellent. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it gives us also potential to leverage state resources, additional state resources, right? Because the state gets something like $4 billion in total. So it's really it's a unique time.
A unique opportunity. And what you'll get from me, Greg, I think you know me very well. I don't like to do things just to do them. I like to do them and do them right. We're going to have a plan. It's going to be well thought out. We're going to execute it and make every step along the way so that we are not wasting opportunity that our city will never get again.
Right. Excellent. Well, we'll be stay close to developments in that front, and certainly love to visit with you as that unfolds and comes together. Let me turn, if I can, to your comprehensive public safety plan. It's a real, I think, given my own understanding of the issues that are so much at the heart of what we're struggling to mitigate and overcome. This comprehensive approach that public safety is a public health issue. I think that's so well put. Other cities in the U.S. and also in Europe have identified violence as a public health crisis. They hired social workers, enhanced public safety, public health capacity. I want to just, here in Baltimore, we have a unique situation. Our homelessness situation, drug addiction, vaccine response is already proving a major challenge. So how do we go at this, and what are we going to add in the way of resources and capacity to make public safety indeed a public health priority?
Well, Greg, I think you bring up a very important part of it. We know this is the reality, right? This city, Baltimore, has been one of the most violent cities in the country longer than I've been alive. And when we have continued to operate the same way year after year after year, we should now know that way is not going to work for us. It never has. And what we understand is that we have to do the tough work of doing this in a comprehensive nature. As you know, I'll be the first to say, that does not mean that there isn't a role for police. There absolutely is and absolutely will be, as long as I'm sitting in the chair as mayor. But what's going to be different is that they're going to be focused on the things that they should be focused on, and allowing us to understand that there are other roles for other agencies in the city of Baltimore, but other agencies outside of the city of Baltimore as well. It's talking about city government. For example, our police department is going to be focused on the people that we know are committing the overwhelming majority of crimes in Baltimore. We call them violent repeat offenders, whatever you want to call them, through the implementation of our group violence reduction strategy that will focus with them and all our law enforcement partners on those individuals and those groups. But where we won't fail, like we failed before in Baltimore, is that every other city that has done focused deterrence or group violence reduction strategy the right way is that they also have other agencies and community partners that come to the table to allow those people to change their lives if they so choose. That's why I created the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement to replace the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. It's about coordinating all of those efforts. It's about working to build the capacity in community-based organizations. It's about the tough work that we're doing now. We're trying to develop this 911 diversion platform, because if the city that has Johns Hopkins and can't get it right when talking about sending people out to police officers out to calls for mental health and substance abuse, if we can't get it right in the city that has the world-class health institutions that we have, then no one can. We're going to do that tough work of getting it out, in addition to expanding the work that our great workers at Safe Streets and our violence interrupters do, supporting the work of folks like We Are Us movement. There's so many different organizations, and what we're going to do through MONSE is coordinate all of those efforts. This is also why I've asked the governor to allow me to restart the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, so that we're holding everybody accountable, Greg, but that we're also communicating and talking consistently so things don't fall by the wayside like they have in recent years.
Excellent points. Good. Do you see the 670 million windfall is potentially helping accelerate this focus?
I think it's a possibility that it would support that, but when you're talking about systems change, Greg, it's not just about the money. It's about, you have to go through the processes and develop. And I know everyone will hear from me very soon about where we are in that diversion process. I actually introduced a bill to the city council today to help that in a different way, reducing the amount of times that police have to respond to something as simple as false alarm calls. Baltimore allows people to have 15 false alarms at a place and the police have to go until the 15th time. The average rule around the country is 3 or 4. That's hours upon hours that our police officers are not spending doing the very things that we all want them to do.
I was about to say, I'm glad to hear that, because we've set ours off a couple of times, but that's an excellent point. You know, patrol cars or 2 show up because the dog or something, or the wind set off an alarm. But let's touch a bit on something that's been in the news also quite a bit, and that is the population decrease. Baltimore's population is now dipped below 600,000 last year. For the first time in more than a century, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And as the Able Foundation report details, since 2000, Baltimore's lost over 15,000 homeowners, and the city's homeownership rate is dropping below 50%, the lowest since 1930. Many Black homeowners are moving to the upper northeastern part of the city, which has seen strong Black population growth, and also moving out of the city entirely. And so that means the middle income neighborhoods are essentially disappearing. You know, you have far more lower income and upper income neighborhoods, but fewer middle income neighborhoods than we did 21 years ago. So what do we, of course we'll come to I'd like to talk about downtown as well. What do we do to stem this exodus, but also attract and bring in new residents?
Well, the first thing, Greg, is very simple. We have to actually tackle the issues that we have. We can't do what's been done in the past and put our heads in the sand and say that these things aren't a problem, right? And as you know, as someone who lives in the upper Northeast, I can see how a neighborhood like that is taken off in recent years and how so many people are buying houses there. But what we to do is actually tackle the issues. We know what's driving people out, right? This is why you hear me consistently talk about violent crime, because we know that's what's pushing people out. We know things like robberies and burglaries are pushing people out of the city. We also know things like, hey, they can't get a water bill that they can trust, it's consistent, that they can rely on. Their trash might not get picked up. Recycling might be canceled for months at a time. Street lights all of these things, when you're paying the amount of fees and things that people have to do to live in the city, will drive anyone out. And that's why you see the focus for me. It's about focusing in those things and building the team that allows us to handle them in a 21st century efficient and effective way. That's one of the first things that Jason, who's going to be hitting up DPW, heard from me. This water bill system has to be fixed quickly as humanly possible, so people can believe in it again. We have to figure out how we can be better with our waste. That's why it was important for me within the first 100 days to restart recycling, right? That's why you consistently hear me say, we have to focus on all types of violent crime, because there's always, and we cannot accept anybody being shot, being murdered, especially young people, seniors in our city. But there's also this conversation that has been getting lost, and I'm not excited, but I'm happy to see some progress on reductions on robberies in the city of Baltimore. But that has to be focused on as well. We have to build a system of accountability where the city government is now being looked at as they have new leadership with myself, the city administration, my whole administration that's actually tackling those issues. And at the same time, Greg, something else, and you and I have had this conversation before, that Baltimore has failed to do, is also tell that there's two sides of every coin. We have great things going on in the city, great neighborhoods, all of this stuff that we are afraid to beat our chest and say, we're good, right? If people will be amazed at the times that I have mayors, council leaders, people from other cities calling me about how did you guys do this? For example, over the weekend, this story came out in the Times about how we were the only police department that got it right when the protest. Right. All of these folks are calling us with everything around police reform. We have to also beat our chest and say, yes, we have our problems. Yes, we're going to tackle them. But also, let me show you what they won't show you on the nightly news. Let me tell you about all this other great things that are happening in Baltimore as well. We have to be able to tell that story and partner with everyone to do that too.
I'm sure you're also aware that the nation's police chiefs put out that report showing that Baltimore City was the only, well, one of three locales that didn't experience an increase in any of the categories in violent crime, really. So, I mean, admittedly, we're starting from a large, number, but
still far too much. But it's also way too much. But it's also important to note that in a year where everybody saw it blow up, it went down even so slightly here, and we're going to push. And I'm pushing them each and every day, every hour, for us to consistently get better here in the city.
There's a great deal of concern about what's to become of downtown and the harbor. I know there's always this seems to be a tension. Baltimore is not just downtown, not just the inner harbor. Nonetheless, it's an important corridor, of course, and a number of businesses, large and small, are migrating to Harbor East. Just recently, the Baltimore Business Journal indicated Transamerica. I'm in the Transamerica Tower. The Senate Club is likely to be moving out. T. Rowe Price, again, Bank of America, Harbor East. So, and then we've seen a steady growth in residents over in Harbor East, which is great, wonderful. But that means we're losing daily foot traffic and here in diminished number of office workers in the central downtown area. Of course, we can talk about Gallery Place, Harbor Place. It seems in a way to represent a different period of time. But so what's the plan around that? How do we? What's the future? And then of course we can move over to West Baltimore. But this stuff. The issues better than I can describe them. But let me just open it up to you on that.
Yeah, this is something that I've hired a world-class economic development professional in Ted Carter to be our deputy mayor for economic development. And we are not like many other places now, especially after COVID, right? For us, the downtown issue was already existing. And then now the pandemic has made it explode even further. What we have to do, Greg, is be honest. And I think you answered the question partly yourself. We have to be honest with ourselves and come to the table with the understanding that we've had the harbor, all the stuff that has been looked at from the mindset and the vision of a time that's now gone. And what we're going to have to do is work with all of our partners, Downtown Partnership, Waterfront Partnership, GBC, Senate, everybody, to talk about how we're going to imagine or reimagine what the new downtown looks like. It's no longer just going to be the central business district. We're going to have to think about what kind of investments, strategic investments from the city, from the state, if that even means agencies coming into the CBD in a more robust way, so that we can really work together to build the new version, the 21st century version of downtown. And that's something that I'm looking forward when Ted gets here in a few weeks, looking forward to him digging right into, because we know how important it is, because we also know how important it is for us to put Baltimoreans back to work coming out of this pandemic.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's big. It's big expectations, of course, but you're right. Nothing but potential when you consider the assets that we have here and the institutions, and it requires imagination and reimagination, of course. Let me ask you, just on a personal note, we're going to turn in a moment to questions. I know you got a hard stop at 6. Got another community meeting, but how's it going? How do you in a short period of time found yourself sitting in the mayor's seat, and how personally, how are you? How's it? How does that feel?
Well, it feels right and feels normal for me. When you work hard at something, Greg, you know where you're supposed to be in the universe at the time you were designed to be there. And that's how it feels for me. But it's not a time for celebration for me. It's a time to get to work. I'm not out here trying to feel good because I'm the mayor of Baltimore. I'm out here to help make the city that I've lived in, that provided opportunity for my family to, both my parents to move here from the rural South to a better level of prosperity, for me to be able to create that kind of opportunity for the generations coming behind me, and to fix my city to being the world-class city that I know it can be.
Well, we're glad you are where you are, and with the energy and the good ideas and fresh ideas that you're bringing to the table. Let me. I know we've got quite a number of participants and other questions that are at on everyone's mind. So, folks, again, those who've joined, I would ask you, because this is a webinar to allow for the maximum number of people, use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can type your question. I will be able to see those. You can do so anonymously, or you can identify yourself. And if you do identify yourself, I'll identify you. I do have a question here from somebody who's anonymous. You focus on developing trust. How do you develop trust when every few months you hear of officials that, well, I'm going to paraphrase this, but need to pay taxes and deal with the issues that we're well aware of that have been in the news. And of course, one of your predecessors is, that's a story that's played out on the national stage. So building trust, that's a key priority of yours.
Listen, like I said last week, restoring confidence in city government is a priority for me. And I'll do that by not being distracted, and by not being distracted from addressing the urgent needs of Baltimore. I'm going to remain steadfast on my mission to do my job, to do what the citizens of Baltimore elected me to do. And partly that is to build trust, right? And for me, I've always been transparent. This is why today, on I think the 6-year anniversary of me passing Baltimore's open data law that makes us share all this information, I hired a data officer for the city of Baltimore. This is the kind of work. This is why I've done this stuff over the past. I was the first elected official in Baltimore City a long time ago to start sharing my taxes so that people can see that information. It's about, for me, showing people that I'm committed every day, by building a better city government every day, by not being distracted about things that are going to play their course, to make sure that I remain focused on my job. And my job is to be the mayor, the chief executive of the city, and build trust by showing people that there is a new way of operating through me and my administration.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mayor. Question here, another anonymous attendee. How is your administration looking at addressing the high property tax rates, which is contributing to the departure of people to move out of the city and for people to invest in moving to the city, especially with younger people just starting out? Have you considered any sort of property investment assistance similar to what Philadelphia did, which caused a great boom in the last 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, I wish I had this person's name so I could follow up with him. I don't like the anonymous because I can't have a further conversation with the person if I wanted to. But I'll say this: this is one of the things that you'll always hear from me. Before we even talk about what we're going to do with property taxes, we actually have to have the systems built in place and the understanding of what the city is doing with all of its dollars first. They don't know yet. We're doing the work right now. Top to bottom analysis of every agency, every practice, every policy, how much property, land, cars, computers, all of that city government has, so that we can now go back and look and see where there are inefficiencies that we can efficientize and make sure that things are happening. All of those things that we have to build in place so that we can analyze where we need to go. This is why you heard me announce a few weeks ago that we're going to be doing a total revamp of our procurement system, because we know that money has been wasted there. This is why we're also going to be investing in systems to make sure that computer systems and things are updated, because when you have agencies that are operating and have to work together on the capital budget and they all have different computer systems that don't talk to each other, all of these things play a part out on how your taxpayer dollars are not being spent in the way that they are, so that we can do that. And once we have that information that we need, then we can set ourselves out like they did in San Francisco, like they did in Nashville, on a long-term plan of how we can do a reduction of taxes in Baltimore. And we are looking at different ways to incentivize home ownership and other things here in the city. And you're going to be hearing about that more in the future as well.
Thank you. Similar questions from Ann Carr and Dr. Japheth Tucker does well about issues of, again, another of your key priorities, equity and systemic racism, and how do you plan to address equity in housing and in business development? And as Ann points out, what can we do really about systemic racism and rooting that out, which of course just continues generationally to put more and more at a disadvantage?
Yeah, and thank you Ian, for the question. We know that the Baltimore that we live in today is rooted in that inequity map, as we like to call it, through the redlining law, the first of its kind that was passed here in Baltimore City. But in order to undo that, you are never going to undo inequity and systematic racism that was caused via policy without changing policy. That's why I passed out equity law a few years ago. That's why I'm excited to having to implement it here in city government first, because, and before I go out to the private businesses and the other places in Baltimore City and say, you guys have to do better with equity, you got to do this, I first have to have my house in order. And city government is not in order. We have been very inequitable when you talk about supporting housing and development in neighborhoods that need it. The city government hasn't done that. The biggest, most egregious, inequitable thing in the city, in my opinion, has been the capital budget, which has gone overwhelmingly to wealthy and white neighborhoods, leaving poor Black neighborhoods behind. Going through this process of making sure that we are correcting the policies in every agency as the law requires, that moving forward, beginning with the budgets that I'll be overseeing, that capital operating, all of these things have to change and the policy has to change. That's the way that we're going to do it, because when then we can go and say that I, as the mayor, have directed my agencies to make strong capital investments and other operational investments into these neighborhoods that have been ignored, creating home ownership programs for people who are renting in neighborhoods, paying $1,100, $1,200 a month, where they could be owning a home for $700, $800 a month, simply because they've been locked out of the system. Making those kind of investments is how we're going to build Baltimore to a more equitable city.
Thank you. Question about COVID. We're all trying to imagine what a post-COVID world looks like, and it's going to be more of a gradual process than a hard stop and a new beginning. What are you, there's a question, why are you loosening COVID restrictions next week when new case numbers seem to be going up?
Well, and thank you, Ian, for that question. So I'll just say this, as I said last week, we're going to be constantly looking at our cases. When I made the announcement about our COVID restrictions, our cases were going down. I think that we know this is a a ebbs and flow, unfortunately. We know that I will not be afraid to make the tough and unpopular decisions if the restrictions need to stay in place. We're always going to follow the guidance, follow the science, and the health commissioner and all of my health advisors will be advising me on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the question. Catherine Ward, I'm a lifelong 64-year resident of Baltimore, Maryland, and it breaks my heart to see the condition of the city. I hear your plans, but I would like to hear what your specific goals are, though you have covered some of those, and how you and your administration plan to be accountable, obviously beyond the threat of re-election. So we have a skeptic among us, Mayor. So Catherine Ward would like to hear your answer.
I love skeptics. Catherine, this is what I would say, and my team's probably going to fall out when I say this. A re-election is the furthest thing from my mind. We've had too many mayors in Baltimore who've only governed to get reelected in 3 years. That's how we ended up in the situation that we're in. That's how I was born into a city that was one of the most violent in the country and has remained so for 7 years that I've been alive. You will be able to hold me accountable because we're going to be first. We're going to be transparent. That's why you can go and look and see everything that I've done in my first 100 days. That's why we're going to be doing open checkbooks so you can see how the city is spending your taxpayers' dollars. That's why you will always see me communicating not just through the media, but directly with residents. You can hold me accountable by contacting and being in contact with us and holding us accountable to the things that we say. When you see those plans that we put out there and you see us and we're tracking that, that's how you hold us accountable. You don't have to wait until the re-election time comes to hold me accountable because that information is going to be there for you to see consistently. And as I often say, because especially when you're talking about dollars, that's where you'll be able to hold me accountable by looking at it with your own eyes to seeing what we're doing.
Mayor, I wanted to ask you a question because you introduced the city administrator model. You know, Baltimore's long had the strong mayor model, and could you just, for the benefit of everyone, talk a little bit about the reasoning behind that and what that changes and in terms of your role and the administrator's role?
Yeah, I'll use this story, Greg. If everywhere else in the world is operating at a higher level of efficiency, effectiveness, and professionalism than you, and you're the only one that operates the way that you do, then it's not them, it's you. Baltimore, and we still have a strong mayor system.
Right.
It was the only city that we're close to, be it Philadelphia, DC, or Richmond, the only city/county, because we're both technically in our region, that did not already have a professional administrator in addition to the chief executive. For example, in Baltimore County, County Executive Olszewski has a county administrator and a deputy county administration. Ironically, they both came from city government out to Baltimore County. No one says to him, Johnny O, that he's not the boss in Baltimore County. It's about making sure that we are not continuing with the outdated, irresponsible, stupid practices of the past of people hiring their friends, people they went to school with, people that are politically connected to run city government without qualifications, without experience, all of those things that we know has happened here in Baltimore, and requiring us to join all of the counties around Maryland, most cities around the country, and having a professional person run the operations. I'm the CEO. City Administrator Shorter is the COO. That's how it works. He reports directly into me. That's how it works. I still have deputy mayors. They report into him and up to me. It's about making sure that we are no longer operating this outdated, broken system of government and putting the best practices in place.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Bridget Alston Smith asks, hello, sir. I'm on the ground student and family advocate. I am the CEO of the Dr. Angela Davis Leadership Academy in West Baltimore. I'm in the process of developing a wraparound support center and sports complex in West Baltimore. I'm currently working with our We Are Us and other grassroots organizations. Who should I be speaking with to share our vision with and on what needs to happen for our students and families?
Hi, Ms. Bridget, it's always good to see you. I would say very simply, the easiest way for you, since you're already working with We Are Us, is to just with Captain Muhammad. He knows how to get directly with me and get the information to me as a person who supports the movement very well. So I would love to be able to chat. You can get the connection directly through him.
Very good. Thanks for that. I think another question here from Japhus Doswell. Dr. Japhus Tucker Doswell asks, how feasible is it to grow Baltimore into a high-tech city that rivals Silicon Valley, that grows a significant number of high-tech minority companies that create jobs and measurably increase revenue in the city?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually great. That's one of the areas that we know we can grow in the city. But the key thing for us, as all of these companies are sparring out between Hopkins and all these other places, we have to make sure that they're staying here. The city has to make an investment in how we're going to keep them here, help those businesses grow in our city, because with our proximity to DC and of course, how tech in the defense industry goes, we know that's an opportunity for us. We just have to strike on it, and it's something that I want to do.
Thank you. More on, I'm just going to make sure we get a nice diversity of different questions, but another one question about mental health addressing mental health as a way to reduce violent crime. What is the role of mental health in reducing? So you sort of touched on that, of course, but you talked about the major institutions here, Hopkins and UMS and others, of course.
Yeah, I think that and thank you, Mr. Karasek, for the question. I think that we have to understand the totality, right? Again, and you'll hear me always say this way. Again, yes, we need the police focus on the things that they should be focused on, including something that I didn't mention earlier, Greg, that I should, us being the first city to have this world-class tool to actually deal with gun trafficking. Mm-hmm. We're a city where 63% of the guns that BPD recovered last year came from out of state. Now we know the transit issues that we have in the city. While we should hold that young man, that young woman that had that illegal gun in their hand responsible, we know that that young man or that young woman didn't go to Virginia or Pennsylvania or Georgia or North Carolina to buy that gun because they probably have never left the state of Maryland or the city of Baltimore for that matter. We're going to be doing that through our new program and our partnership with Everytown Against Gun Safety, having detectives focus on that tracking those people down. However, we also know the role that trauma and all kind of other mental support play in violent crime in our city. When you are someone who's had 3, 4, 5 people in your family be shot, when you know that these things and you never deal with that trauma and that grows into you from a young person growing up, all of that changes you. We have to deal with both at the same time. We have to get at the root while we're dealing with the day-to-day simultaneously. It can't be an either or for us. And that's the work that we have to build out, because we know that it has not been looked at as something that's connected, but it absolutely is. And I know under Director Jackson's leadership, we'll be able to figure out how to weave all that together.
Somewhat related the question, I guess, in tech and broadband, everything is critical, and giving access to neighborhoods that are not in isolation, deserts from the internet capability. The governor's putting energy, Adam Borden asked this, governor's putting energy behind rural broadband access. How are you working to open up Baltimore to more broadband competition besides the dominant provider?
Yeah, so actually this is a great conversation for today. We actually announced our digital equity director today, Jason Harderback, who his role is to go and work on providing and breaking down that digital divide in Baltimore in every way possible. That be it looking at the city itself, providing those opportunities, creating the pathway for how the infrastructure that we can build on here in the city to create those opportunities that you're talking about. Jason has extensive experience in that area, and we're going to have to do that and also understand that with hopefully, Greg, with a federal infrastructure package coming too that will also be focused on this, that this will be the time to have it and where cities can make the investment necessary, and we look forward to working with all our partners.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mayor. As Serena Waters, is there any plan to do some business planning and process improvement with Section 8 As a landlord, I wanted to consider Section 8. However, I found the customer services to be less than satisfactory for new landlords. The information sharing with the landlord, horrible. Response from management, not good. Section 8 needs a customer service focus group for landlords. They seem to serve the renter well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. This is something where we know there has to be partnership. As you know, the Section 8 rules and regulations, all of those stuff are come from the feds, and we have had conversations with how we need to improve the conversation and improve the processes. This is something that I've heard from many people over the years, that folks would love to do it to help out, but they need to improve the processes. And now I think with the new people that we have on board, especially at the federal level, and having HUD now be run by folks who actually are housing professionals, no disrespect, and not doctors and surgeons, will be real conversations about improving practices, so that when policies and things are set, that they're thought about how it impacts people at the local level as well.
Thank you. From Meredith Upton, I've heard the mayor before regarding his strategy for breaking down silos, which is critical to achieving the level of change and bureaucracy that he's after. It's worth reiterating to this group. Also, when such change is so slow, how do you deal with the critics who don't see the important internal change that's needed in order to achieve change residents want to see?
Yeah, thank you to that, Meredith. The reality is that this is what we communicate all the time. We have had time after time after time after time folks come in who want to just change the top of the silo, change the agency head, change the mayor, change whoever, and everything else stays the same. It's not going to work. If it would have worked by now, we'd be the beacon of how to be a professional city, because we make all those changes consistently. We are talking about agencies that have never been forced to work with each other, to talk with each other, let alone actually strategically plan with each other. That's another reason why we brought in City Administrator Shorter, because what he has been tasked with is doing just that, breaking down those silos, building those policies and practices in place, forcing people to work together. And we're doing that through many different avenues. One of those is actually restarting City Stat and taking it back to where we're talking about accountability and partnership. We have to do that. And what will happen, though, is that people will see that, because what will happen is people will be like, oh, well, things were different. For example, perfect example of it is how we were able to have a successful snow removal program. It's about forcing everyone to work together. That's how you do those things. And when you build in systems and programs, people see it, the output. The output of it is what improves things for the citizens of Baltimore. And that's why we're going to do that systems building work, because we won't get to that destination of a better Baltimore if we are not doing the tough, non-sexy systems changing work that needs to be done for us to even work that. And you have to have the best team possible too. You can't win the Super Bowl with a bunch of bums. You have to have qualified professionals who want to work together as a team. And that's the team that I've been putting together. Some who are here locally, have been in Baltimore, some who have the national experience and pedigree, mixing that together to make the best team for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Makes a great deal of sense. It's all about the team. You're right. The expertise and capability. John Lukutis, I hope I just pronounced that right. What is being done to help improve Baltimore area schools? I know young people, youth, something I also was trying to get at it earlier stage, but is a big priority of yours. There's a terrible article recently about a young man, John points out, in Baltimore schools with a .13 GPA. He said he was on the top of half of his class. What can be done to engage these young people to help raise the standard of education they're getting? I'd love to see real life skills such as real world money management being taught.
Yeah, John,
among other things.
John, I'm glad you brought that up. And we know the most important piece of policy that has been discussed in the state of Maryland finally is going to go into place. We know, I actually was in 7th grade when essentially states took over city schools, right? So it's ironic to be having this conversation as mayor now. But we know that the state of Maryland, to its own admittance, has underfunded city schools to the tune of $300 million a year for at least the last 10 years. So we know that the General Assembly has finally overwritten the governor's short-sighted veto of the blueprint for Maryland's future, because Maryland, often known as the wealthiest state in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, was underfunding its public schools. That's one portion. The second portion, and the portion that's not talked about as much, John, with Blueprint or Kerwin, is about doing the curriculum and the standards and all of that over building in more community schools. I'm a CTE graduate from Merville High School. We're going through that process of reimagining CTE. This is something I'm going to be coming to the business community about, making sure that what our career technology education is for our students are things that are going to lead to jobs that are going to be needed in the city of Baltimore. We also, through this, are going to have to build in more levels of accountability and understanding that there's always a deeper story than what's on the news, and understanding the challenges of some schools, and especially some of our alternative schools, and how we need to make sure that those students are getting the resources that they need as well, and that there are no children that can be thrown away. I know in that case in particular, this was the issue that the school system itself recognized in 2019 and started to work on. We have to build the accountability in, but we also have to make sure that we're putting things in place to make sure that our kids actually have the opportunity to get a 21st century education. We know that buildings are very important in that as well, the environment. We've made it through our first phase of 21st century schools, and we go into the next, but it's also important how we deal with the structure of what they're learning as well. And sorry about that, Greg.
No.
My point of that, I will be appointing school board commissioners who understand how important that is, and that are going to be advocating for us to operate like that.
People expect a lot of their elected leaders and mayor here in Baltimore, and rightly or wrongly, or fairly or unfairly at times. Of course, it's about what we can all do to be engaged, to be part of solutions versus, it's easy to use a Baltimore City Voters page or whatever and just throw pot shots all day. But how do you, what can we do? What would you tell the citizens, the residents of the city? Because you can't do it alone. Your administration can't do it alone. It's about engaging and building capacity, bringing in new ideas and expertise. What do you need from us?
Yeah, I mean, first thing, I just need us to remain committed and remain focused on how we all can improve Baltimore. And then think about your city as like a 40-passenger bus. Every seat on that bus is something that needs to be improved and corrected with our city. Figure out which seat is comfortable for you, get in it, stay in it, and get involved. Do things. Listen, there are thousands of young men and young women in Baltimore who are waiting to mentor, who want one, who need one. You stepping up to do that could change and save that young man, that young woman's life. There are young people who need help learning how to read. There are adults that need help learning how to read. All of these kind of things are important. Simple things like helping with community cleanups. I know I'll be restarting my community cleanups, hopefully with the blessing of our health commissioner, right? Come out on one of these cleanups on a Saturday. We'll be announcing them, where you see us, how we're taking tons and tons and trash away from people's neighborhoods and helping them join in, and how much that means to folks in our city. Participate in your neighborhood crime walk or your neighborhood COP, like I do in my neighborhood in Northeast Baltimore. There is something everyone can do. And the most important thing that you can do for me is hold me accountable. Send me emails. Let me know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. But just do that in a way that always talks about how we can be better, because together is the only way that we're going to improve Baltimore.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Thank you for that. Is there a place you want to direct people? Should they go to your, to keeping updated?
Yeah, they can always go to mayor.baltimorecity.gov. And actually, if you want to, if you go to baltimorecity.gov, you can actually sign up to get emails, text alerts, whatever you choose to have from us, so that we can see. You can always follow us on social media. All of them are at Mayor B.M. Scott. We put everything that we do there for everyone to see.
Thank you. Well, we're want to be respectful of your time. I know you've got a full evening yet, Mayor. We can't thank you enough for spending time with us, for sharing your insights and your perspective on and your vision for the city we love, and how we're going to fully optimize the tremendous assets and of course our potential that represents. Thank you for your commitment, Mayor, and for making use of the capabilities of all of us to be involved in your success, which of course will be Baltimore's success. And thanks to everyone who's joined us. This will be available, this Zoomcast or this webinar, soon after, within a day or so. So if you can share and of course watch it again and get it further information. Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you.
Everybody.
Stay well. We'll see you soon. Thanks all.